Rats.
Oh, this gotta suck her.
Wherever people have gathered
this
in
gotta
numbers,
suck. I don't know.
Which do you think is the worst punishment?
I don't know. If I had to pick. No bullshit, let's go. Criminals are crazy as hell, man. And we have known to be brutal and absolutely savage when it comes to certain things. Welcome to Devin GTV, and today we're about to check out the worst punishments in human history.
You're probably familiar with a lot of different
punishments. Is that cell phone?
From detention to jail time. You might have even heard about barbaric historical sentences, such as hangings, burnings, and stonings. But as dreadful as they were, humans throughout history have come up with even more twisted and terrible ways to punish alleged wrongdoer.
What's worse than watching a person hang from the damn neck until their feet stop kicking? You see their face turning blue and then start turning black. But you think of worse ways to kill someone?
From burning bulls to bug buffets, these are some of the worst punishments.
I bet you be hot as hell in that bull.
Sacking of Rome. Have you ever been in a cramped spot with someone you don't like? Maybe shared an elevator with that one annoying coworker?
Sacking of Rome.
Well, it could always be worse. That annoying coworker could also be an angry, venomous snake.
What?
The ancient Roman poenoculae, or punishment of the sack, involved placing the victim into a large canvas sack.
What?
At this point, a dog, cat, monkey, rooster, and snake would then also be tossed into the sack.
So you toss a human being in a sack with something venomous or something vicious, and what you just try to fight your way out, dog? Or what if you fucking claustrophobic? You're gonna fuck around and die before you kill the thing.
Before the sack itself was thrown into a river.
Shit.
The idea behind poenoculae was that as the sack slowly filled with water,
what?
frightened and aggressive animals inside would tear each other and the unfortunate victim stuck in the middle.
You dead anyway.
Apart.
You gonna drown before you to the bottom.
Thrown into the sack varied from punishment to punishment. After all, why waste a perfectly good monkey when you could just use an extra rooster? This nasty punishment was most often meted out to those accused of parricide, which is the crime of slaying one of your parents. I'm not exactly
but you did kill
sure
your parents,
why slaying your parents would net you a timeout in the danger sack. Doesn't seem like an especially ironic or fitting punishment. Maybe it's funnier
I agree.
if you speak Latin.
You just killed your damn parents.
This barbaric punishment fell out of style in the 3rd century CE in Rome, only to be reinstated by Emperor Justinian 200 years later, where it remained in use for another 400 years. Definitely redefines the meaning of getting the sack.
They're getting the sack.
Scathing reviews.
Okay.
If you were told you were going to be experiencing the boats in ancient Persia, you might expect a pleasant trip lounging along the Cruelty River.
Sound like a damn cruise to me.
Dates. In reality, you'd be in for one of the most disgusting experiences imaginable.
Getting the boats.
Devised in the 5th century BCE, scaphism, also known as the boats, was a punishment that started off sweet. Literally, the victim was fed a large amount of sweet honey and milk or cream, and things got considerably less comfortable after that. If the victim was lucky, they would be tied up inside a boat. If they weren't, they'd be placed inside a boat before another upturned boat was placed on top of them, so that their arms, legs, and head were sticking out. The boats were then pushed into a lake or swamp.
But what's the point of putting milk and honey in your stomach? Now, I can see if they done that, ties you up and had like the sun beaming on you, because I would assume like the sun would boil your intestines or some kind of shit. But what's the point of putting the fucking boat on your stomach?
And this is where things get
okay,
nasty.
Here we go.
The sickly mixture of milk and honey would eventually cause the victim to vomit or
to shit on yourself. You shit on yourself.
Gross and causing dehydration. The sugary contents of the victim's excretions would also attract insects and Over the next few days, the victim would slowly starve while their body was consumed inside the boat by flies, maggots, and any other awful swamp creatures you can imagine.
God damn. Never mind. Not only are you hungry, but you got shit inside your stomach and you alive, bro.
If you'd done something really bad, your boat would be pulled back ashore so you could be force-fed more milk and drag out this process even longer. Plutarch, a Greek essayist, recorded an instance where a Persian soldier killed a nobleman and survived 17 days of scaphism before succumbing to his punishment. Man, and I thought an hour of detention after school was a cruel sentence.
They say 17 days? He survived 17 days filled with milk and honey being eaten alive by bugs?
Rats.
Oh,
Around
this gotta
history,
suck her.
Wherever people have gathered
This
in
gotta
large numbers,
suck.
rats have followed, living in our homes rent-free and eating our delicious trash.
You know what? I would say this right here would probably be something that I would be afraid of because I hate rats. And then rats eat your ass slow too. And they can chew through almost anything.
It's only fair we put them to work.
That boy,
In modern
huge.
times, rats
That's a
are
big ass
mostly
rat.
employed as test subjects in scientific research.
That's
But
a
if
cute
we
rat,
jump
though.
back a few hundred years, these pernicious pests were proliferators of pain. In the
Man.
17th century, the
They be
Dutch would
huge,
place a
too.
rat on a prisoner's abdomen before securing a pie.
Oh, man. And then heat it up.
Would then be heated, and the rat, eager to escape, would begin to
Eat itself.
burrow through the prisoner's skin.
Jesus,
Of course,
man.
this isn't the only way we humans have utilized rats to hurt each other. Of
That's
all
crazy.
the awful places you could end up in medieval England, the Tower of London had to be the worst.
What's worse
The
than being eaten
infamously
alive from a rat?
gruesome prison made use of a special rat dungeon, which I'm sorry to say wasn't for imprisoning criminal rats. The waters of the nearby River Thames would often rise in the rain and sweep the rats
Oh,
of the city into the
shit.
dungeon, where they would scare and even nibble on the chained up prisoners.
So they eating your ass slowly. From the feet to the head. Slowly, bro. And you chained up so you can't even kick. You can't do shit, dog.
Around the same time in Germany,
Oh,
rats were
wee.
being starved and then placed in a cage, which would then be fastened
Say, make
around
your
the
ass
victim's
hungry.
neck.
Make 'em
I'm
hungry,
sure
boy.
You can imagine what the cramped, hungry rats did next. Yikes. Or should I say rats? Well, between being eaten alive by rats and
Damn.
being eaten alive by insects,
Oh,
which
no.
do you think is the worst punishment?
I don't know. If I had to pick, just shoot me, bro.
For the rats, hit the subscribe button. And for the insects, hit that like button. All done? Great.
Make sure you
Now,
guys
what
subscribe
horror
too.
we got next?
Subscribe, man.
What a trip. Let's take a break from physical harm for a moment to talk about psychological torture.
If you guys have enjoyed my reaction so far, do your boy your favor. Smash that thumbs up. Turn on your bell. Let's get back to it.
Now, what horror have we got next?
Can't get no worse than that.
What a trip.
What a drip.
Let's take a break from physical harm for a moment to talk about psychological torture. And no, I don't mean watching a modern Simpsons episode.
Hold up, dog. Simpson was just shit. How could you not like the Simpsons, bro?
Chinese water torture is a form of punishment and interrogation that involves restraining
Okay,
someone's
that's
arms
modern.
and legs before placing a bucket full of water above
That's
their
modern
head.
torture.
The bucket has a small pinprick-sized hole in the bottom that drips water onto the victim at regular intervals. The victim is usually positioned so the drops hit them on the forehead, which along with your fingertips is one of the most sensitive areas of the body. While this may not sound so bad at first,
I'm not, bro,
it
don't
can
sound
last
bad.
for weeks. As the process goes on, it becomes more and more maddening because the victim is unable to think or concentrate on anything other than the constant dripping.
Let me get this right. So they can strain you, put a bucket over your head with a single drip, and let that shit just drip on your head. I can see how that could be irritating, but torture? Yeah.
Thoughts become incoherent, other sensations fade away until all that's left is
It's
the
the drop.
hammering feeling
It's the
of-
drop.
In some instances, the victim would be told the water contained poison that would deteriorate
That'll mess you
over
up.
time, compounding feelings
That'll
of
mess you up in the
anxiety and
head.
paranoia. In all likelihood, the Chinese are getting undeserved flack as the pioneers of this punishment, as its use was first documented in Italy. In the late 15th century, Hippolytus de Moselle wrote that the punishment was inspired by the way natural water would slowly erode stones over time. It's thought the word Chinese was added simply to make it seem exotic and mysterious, like the ye olde equivalent of smart water. Since then, it's been utilized all over the world, from the American Civil War to Spanish inquisitors in the 16th century, who also experimented with forced drinking as punishment.
Now that would suck. That would suck.
Well, at least they didn't have access to sparkling water. White light.
White light.
Our next
Probably
punishment
bright as
is
hell.
known as white torture, or sometimes white terror. To understand white terror, however, we first need to understand solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is a form of punishment frequently used against prisoners today that involves placing them in a small cell devoid of human contact or activities.
I can see how that can be torture because you're in a small cell, you're not talking to anybody, you can't hear anybody, and so as humans, we need some sort of contact.
In the United States, solitary confinement is used to reprimand behavior as major as starting fights, but also as minor as having extra rolls of toilet paper in your cell. Most solitary cells are just 6 by 9 feet in size.
I feel like that would suck too if you claustrophobic because your ass feel like you all strangled up, man.
Imprisonment can last for days, weeks, or months, resulting in extreme distress and psychological damage. Because humans are naturally social animals, our brains often invent stimuli when they're deprived of it. Extended solitary confinement is known to lead to hallucinations, paranoia, depression, nightmares, disassociation from reality, and even physical pain and nausea. One inmate in solitary for 23 days once said, "One night I heard someone screaming far away. Then I realized it was me."
So is it more like your mind start playing tricks on you?
Though it's hard to imagine, there's actually an even more extreme version of solitary confinement: white terror. The victim is placed inside a stark, bright white room. Everything in the room is white and non-reflective, from the bed to the toilet, and even the victim's clothes. Bright lights are positioned in such a way as to eliminate as many shadows as possible and make the victim feel as though they are trapped in a white void.
We can't even sleep. That would be the sucky part there. Is like, how can you sleep? I can't sleep with the damn TV on.
Even mealtime is no escape from the encompassing
There's white.
as they are
Even your food white
from white bowls, which is silently slid through a hatch in the white door.
Damn.
These meals occur at random times, so the victim is unable to gauge how much time has passed since their imprisonment. In the white room, it's hard to tell if it's been days or weeks since your last conversation. Oh, and silence is another awful part of this punishment. The only way prisoners can communicate with guards is to slip a white sheet of paper under the door. But even then, the guards are instructed to wear cushioned shoes that don't produce any noise when walking about.
Get the hell out of here. You can't hear them, you can't see them, you can't talk to them. You don't know what's going on. Even your food in the bowls that they put the food in is white.
Effects of the white room are the complete, overwhelming deprivation of anything, except one's own mind, which quickly deteriorates.
Piece of shit.
Just 15 minutes in the white room is said to lead to feelings of paranoia and anhedonia, the inability to feel happiness. White torture was supposedly invented by the CIA in the 1970s for utilization against the Viet Cong. Iran still uses white torture today, and one detainee put it thusly: "After 3 days, I wanted words, anything, even swearing, even interrogation. Considering I can't make it 5 minutes without I hate to think how quickly I'd crack."
He said it can last 3 days.
Severe feather warning.
What?
If you've ever seen an old cartoon, you may be familiar with the practice of tarring and feathering. This old-timey punishment involves slathering the victim in hot tar before dumping a bag of feathers over them, making them look like a giant chicken.
Is the hot tar the torture? Or is you look like a damn chicken the torture? Because I'm like, I don't give a fuck how I look. You pouring that hot tar on me, that's a different story.
The obscure punishment was first used in the 12th century by sea captains as
so this is more of an embarrassment
in the English Navy. Centuries later, in the 1760s, it was rediscovered by colonial Americans and became a favorite form of mob justice, usually employed against folks that had simply offended the sensibilities of a community. Unlike other punishments discussed today, tarring and feathering wasn't meant to end the victim's life, so much as hurt and humiliate them. Pine tar was often used.
What if your mentality is like, fuck people? Can't embarrass me then, then what?
Used as it has a relatively low melting point of around 130 degrees Fahrenheit. This means the tar becomes goopy and sticky long before it becomes lethally hot, but would also still be hot enough to cause burns and blisters. These blisters did hold the risk of becoming infected and causing worse problems down the line.
The tar, like I said,
also served as
a
visual indicator you'd been punished long after you'd defeathered yourself. Tarring and feathering was often carried out in a public forum before the victim was paraded through the streets, where they could be mocked by onlookers. Disempowerment, humiliation, and pain were the ultimate goals of this punishment. Though the practice fell out of fashion as official state-mandated punishment, it turns out that it's pretty hard to put a lid on mob justice. In America,
Right,
there are
right.
reports of men who refused to serve in the First World War being tarred and feathered in the streets. The barbaric punishment even popped up as recently as 2007 in Ireland, where someone dealing illicit substances was tied to a lamppost before
Oh,
being
shit!
tarred and feathered by vigilantes.
So he's dealing
I did not
drugs.
get on their
Sure
bad side.
does.
I've never looked good in feather jackets. An elephant never forgives. You have to feel bad for elephants. All
Why?
they really want to do is chill out by the watering hole with their buds.
I have heard the elephants' memories are crazy. They can remember stuff from years ago.
Because they're so big and weird looking, humans have
They
used them for
huge.
everything from circus performances to weapons
Piss
of
them
war,
off, though.
and even for
Piss
executions.
him off.
The most infamous and well-known employment of elephant executioners
What is this?
comes from medieval India and was known as Gunga Rao. If you
Gunga
consider
Rao.
that an Asian elephant typically weighs around 8,800
Woo!
pounds, as much as 9 grand
Damn!
it doesn't take long to figure out
Huge.
how they could be used to end a life. Gunga Rao involved the victim placing their head
Oh,
in a wooden
shit!
stake as an elephant was slowly marched towards them before squishing the life out of them with their enormous feet.
I'll tell you one thing. That will be a quick death. Think about that. That mug weighing over 8,000 pounds. Once you step on your head, bro, it's a wrap. Like, you ain't got to think about it because it's going to happen in an instant.
Gunga Rao was not employed conservatively and was the punishment of choice for
Oh, he
everything
grabbing his-
from
oh,
thievery to
shit.
tax evasion.
He said he holds you
This is
upside down and
perhaps
stump
why
you.
it captured the imaginations of medieval travelers to India, though elephantine executions actually dated back to the classical era. They were employed in ancient Rome, Carthage, and Macedon. And one instance after the death of Alexander the Great, Macedonian regent Perdiccas sentenced dozens of insurrectionists to a hefty trampling.
Damn.
And while the straightforward
Yeah.
smooshing was devastatingly effective, there have been other, more creative forms of pachyderm
hold up, he
punishments
get
around
ate?
the globe. In
the
Thailand,
hell?
elephants would fling victims around like ragdolls with their powerful trunks, whereas in Sri Lanka, they'd be gored with their menacing tongues.
Boy, you know something? I've always thought about, like, why don't elephants use their horns? Because to me, the horns are the most vicious parts of an elephant. Them motherfuckers long.
The Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta wrote of an incident of Gunga Rao in which the elephants were wearing sharp instruments on their feet
Damn.
and tusks to aid in the execution, which really seems like overkill to me.
Yeah, it's definitely overkill
Literally.
for sure.
A load of steaming bull. If you've ever had to use public transportation on a hot day, you might have some idea
would
what
suck.
this next punishment is like.
Good
The
people,
story
what?
goes that he was keen to create a new nauseating torture device. To make it, he commissioned the one guy in town.
If you guys were paying attention, what is scaphism? A. Being sent to an island with cocktails with beautiful women. B. Being forced in a dungeon to drink coal oil, gasoline, and to be eaten by rats. C. When they fill your stomach with milk and honey and place another boat on top of you and place you in a swamp to die. D. When they have you stand on one leg in a river with crocodiles. Place your answer in the comments and stay to the end to see what the answer is.
More messed up than him, an inventor named Perilos, who created the Brazen Bull.
Oh,
The device was a
man.
bronze statue of a bull with a hollow and large interior. The victim was to be placed inside the dark, cramped statue before a fire was lit underneath it.
And get cooked.
As the statue slowly heated up, the victim would be cooked alive inside.
Damn.
Now, if that wasn't enough to tip you off that
Ooh, that would
Perilos was
suck.
a serious sadist, consider the fact that the bull's nostrils were connected to the statue's interior. This meant as the victim struggled, their screams would reverberate out of the statue, mimicking the cries of a raging bull.
That's crazy. That is
Even
crazy.
Phalaris, the infamously cruel tyrant king, took one look at the Brazen Bull and said, this is a little messed up, dude. As punishment for, well, basically doing what he was asked, Phalaris had Perilos entombed inside his own creation and a fire was lit underneath.
He said, let me test out your creation and cook you. Get the fuck. How do you kill your torturer, creator, man?
After getting a few good chuckles in, Phalaris let Perilos out, apparently assuring him it was all just a harmless
Get you
joke.
crazy as hell.
Changing his mind yet again, Phalaris then had Perilos tossed off a
Get
cliff.
the fuck.
Talk about indecisive. Oh, and according to some accounts, Phalaris was later burned alive in the very Brazen Bull he commissioned during an uprising.
They say payback a bitch. You wanna cook us? Let's go ahead and cook your ass.
So let this be a lesson to everyone watching. If you invent a gruesome method of execution, don't be
Damn.
surprised when it's turned against you. I'm fuming. Things are about to get steamy. Because it's time to talk about being boiled alive.
Oh my
That's
God.
right. Ever since people figured out they could boil a carrot to make it softer, awful tyrants have been doing the same to
Say
people.
boiling people?
The earliest records of lethal boiling came from Emperor Nero in ancient Rome, with the victims primarily being Christians. In 1531, King Henry VIII of England passed an act decreeing poisoning a crime punishable by boiling. This was probably because Henry had an apparent fear of poisoning. And look at the dude. He wasn't about to stop eating. Shortly after Henry died, Edward VI outlawed boiling, recognizing the Middle Ages were coming to an end, and it was time to rein in the nasty stuff.
He did the nasty
How
stuff.
nasty was it?
He said
well,
the nasty
you could call
stuff.
it a death that retreats inwards, starting in your extremities. This is
What?
because your arms and legs are the most exposed parts of your body and contain lots of nerve endings. So pain
What?
begins in your fingers and toes and shoots inwards. After this, your skin, muscle, and fat begin to soften and liquefy from the heat fusing to your clothes.
Oh my God. I was just thinking, I'm like, you know when you guys put your hands in water and you get all soggy like? Could you imagine that, but your shit is boiling hot?
This heat will then boil your organs
Ooh.
from the inside as well as your flesh from the outside.
Ooh.
You'll also likely go blind fairly quickly, so you'll be thrashing around in the dark. If you're dunked into water that's already bubbling, your brain can boil inside your head fast, which
Damn.
is strangely merciful. If you're placed into a
He said
liquid
strangely
that's
merciful.
slowly heated up,
Well,
your
you
body
got
will
quick.
try to adjust to the temperature change, which really drags things out, making everything slower and more agonizing.
Oh my God.
If your
dog.
executioners know what they're doing, this can take minutes or even hours, and you'll be awake for most of it.
He said you
Now,
cooking
if
for
you have more
hours.
sympathy for those lobsters in the grocery store tanks. Thankfully, this punishment isn't employed anywhere in the
Damn.
world today, though people still accidentally boil to death today in hot springs and sewer accidents. Ride it out. Here's a fact to soothe your nerves. As it turns out, many of the scariest looking torture devices from the Middle Ages are fake. Shady museums and con men began creating nasty contraptions in the 18th century, which quickly captured the public's imagination.
Off with your head.
This means famously nightmarish devices like the Iron Maiden and the Pair of Anguish are just props rather than actual torture implements.
What the hell
Nerve
is that
soothed?
to the right?
Good, because this next one is awful.
That looks like somebody like grab your balls and pull your balls from the bottom.
Introducing the wooden horse, also
The wooden
known
horse.
as the Dutch
Oh,
horse
shit.
or Spanish donkey. If the multinational names didn't tip you off, the wooden horse was a punishment device popular across medieval Europe.
Say
The
spikes through your
contraption
balls.
consists of a long, square-shaped wooden beam held up by several legs for support. One of the corners of the beam would be positioned skywards, and the unlucky victim would be forced to straddle the beam.
Ooh wee.
The corners would uncomfortably dig into the victim's crotch as well as the sides of their legs. On some occasions, weights were applied to the victim to drag them down more.
Oh wee. So you want something real sharp in your balls, whatever it is, just being forced on it, dog.
The corners of the wooden beam could be quite sharp, but it didn't matter too much if they weren't, because victims would have to ride the horse for hours or even days at a time.
Damn.
Though the wooden horse wasn't lethal, it was extremely
Hell
painful
yeah.
and restricted blood flow through the legs, which could cripple the victim. To add insult to injury, the wooden
Shit.
horse would sometimes have a mock head and tail at either end, and be long enough
Damn.
to support multiple people. The Judas cradle was a more
That's
personal version
crazy.
of the device and featured a single large spike positioned on the seat of a chair. Talk about a pain in the ass.
What the
Grotesque
hell?
and uncivilized as it was, the wooden horse was still in use during the American War of Independence. George Washington himself claimed it was an excellent way to extract information from prisoners.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's one way to get someone
Yes,
off
suck.
their high horse. Pain in the head.
Pain in the head.
Our next story
This is-
concerns the practice of iconoclasm. And no, that isn't a metal band made up of your desktop icons. Iconoclasm is the destruction of religious idols, texts, and monuments, and around the year 720, it swept across the Byzantine Empire. The belief was that the biblical second commandment expressly forbids the worship of images and idols. This ideology continues in some ways today in Judaism and Islam, the two other Abrahamic faiths. At the time, however, not every God-fearing Christian was on board with iconoclasm. Two such anti-iconoclasts were brothers Theophanes and Theodore, and they weren't afraid to preach. They were so bold, they even sought an audience with Emperor Leo V.
They don't come about
sometime in
getting
the
their ass messed up.
810s, asking him to kindly butt out of ecclesiastical matters. He took
crazy.
that surprisingly well for an evangelical emperor, sentencing the brothers into exile on a small
Man, but you
island.
crazy as hell.
When Leo was assassinated in 820, and the brothers regained their freedom. It wasn't long before they ended up in front of the new emperor Theophilus,
What they
who
do
was
to him?
decidedly less forgiving than old Leo.
One king let you go. He died. You come back and try to do it to the next king? Boy, y'all wanna fucking die, man.
Theophilus subjected the brothers to 2 days of torture, in which a 12-line poem insulting them was carved into their heads
Damn.
with hot needles. A rough translation of the poem is on screen now. At school, I was bullied for having a 5-head. How big must have theirs been to fit all of this?
Wow.
Neither brother accepted iconoclasm, with Theodore eventually dying in prison. Theophanes, however, was
Play his
only
kids.
exiled and became a bishop when icon veneration was eventually restored.
Say, change this damn
For their efforts,
religion.
both brothers were canonized as saints, Theophanes and Theodore the Branded. Funny
Wow.
that their images are now celebrated in religious art all these centuries later.
So they still got what they wanted. They still got what they wanted because their religion is celebrated all over.
How would they feel about it? Well, I think the answer would be written all over their faces.
Yeah.
Total blackout. If you're like me, there's a good chance you've tried to get in shape only to head back to the sofa after a single squat. This
Not true.
exercise already sucks. Could you imagine doing it for hours in complete darkness?
Squatting?
That's the idea behind the blackout box. This punishment and interrogation method was utilized by the CIA during the War on Terror. While former CIA executive Buzzy Krongard and even President Obama have admitted that the USA commits torture, some still
Wow.
prefer the term enhanced interrogation. The blackout box is a small box, just barely big enough to fit a crouching human being inside. Remember how awful and dehumanizing solitary confinement sounded?
Yeah,
Well, the
right.
blackout box is the most extreme version imaginable,
Ooh,
locking a
wee.
person
So you
into
just
the
cramped.
darkest, tightest space possible.
So what about if you're claustrophobic? Because you're going to die in that box. Ain't no if and a bus about that.
Stress, the high-pitched sounds of crying children are sometimes
Ooh-wee.
played inside the box.
Oh, we.
In 2015, a journalist from the BBC underwent a blackout box demonstration, but after less than 15 minutes,
Then let me out.
demanded to be let out.
Let me out.
Less fortunate folks have been forced inside boxes less than 1.75 feet wide, 2.5 feet deep, and 2.5 feet tall, which is smaller than some dog crates, and is
Ooh-wee.
hauntingly depicted by their drawings. Some have
Damn,
spent up
dog.
to 250 hours in this box, and that's over 10 days. In one particularly vile instance, the captors
What?
discovered the victim had a fear of insects, and so they poured live cockroaches into the blackout box while the victim was inside, leaving them to crawl over their body for hours.
Damn.
Never thought I'd say this, but suddenly being boiled alive doesn't sound all that bad.
I don't know. If you guys were paying attention, what is escapism? A. Being sent to an island with cocktails with beautiful women. B. Being forced in a dungeon to drink coal oil, gasoline, and to be eaten by rats. C. When they fill your stomach with milk and honey and place another boat on top of you and place you in a swamp to die. D. When they have you stand on one leg in a river with crocodiles. If you pick A, you're wrong as fuck. The answer is C.
The victim was fed a large amount of sweet honey and milk or cream, placed inside a boat before another upturned boat was placed on top of them. These were then pushed into a lake or swamp.
If you guys enjoy my reaction, give your boy your thumbs up, like, share, and comment. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell. Also, share my video.